Hola from Mexico. I'm Bob Henderson. I'm the Nomad Dad for the Nomad Capitalist. Some of the items that I'm discussing every week with you here in the recent past were suggested to me by Andrew's staff in Tbilisi, Georgia, Taco and Lika in particular. And one that they came up with really was an interesting one because I don't think I would have come up with it. And it's maybe somewhat difficult for me to talk about, but I'm going to. And they wanted to know my thoughts on Andrew's expatriation. Well, you know, I'm rather mixed. I know at the time, and this would have been in Christmas time of 2017, Andrew's mother was quite upset about it. I had mixed emotions because remember, I'm the one who sat at that dinner table in the late 90s when Andrew was a teenager, 14 years old, and I said, well, you know, you don't have to live in the same town as your parents. You don't even need to live in the same state. And you know, come to think of it, you don't even need to live in the same country. You need to go where you're treated best. And if I'm going to be true to my word, and I meant that, although I never thought he'd take me seriously. But I meant it, and I still mean it today. I think if you're going to be true to your word, you have to live with that and abide by it when it gets down to crunch time, which 2017 was. It's, you know, I'm one of those people who thinks that when it's all said and done, the United States, it's an experiment. America, not the United States. Remember, America's an idea, the United States is a country. Doug Casey talking to Andrew about that, and I thought those were great thoughts from Doug Casey. But the point is America is an idea, but it's an experiment. And it's a little over 200 years old, and it's something like no other place in the world ever in world history. And I think it's great. There are warts, no question. I mean, you know, it's people. We're all flawed. Can't be perfect, can't be utopia, can't be nirvana. But I think by and large, it's been a great experiment. And on that basis, I you know, I was a little bit concerned. I was a little saddened. On the other hand, I have thought for a long time that the United States has been in decline. I think back to the mid-1990s is when I began to think about that. As I've told you in the past, I was a talk show host, and I got to meet people that you might not get to meet if you're not in the media. And one of the people I met was the chief of staff for a congressman in our area, and he started talking to me about what was going on in Washington, D.C., and I was horrified. And I went home and talked to Andrew's mother, and this is where the whole idea of, well, maybe, you know, you might want to leave the country someday, because what he was telling me horrified me, and we started looking into this. It's a 25-year process. But I think in the last 5 years, it's really gotten to be much worse. It's accelerating. As Stalin said, sometimes decades go by and nothing happens. And then in a matter of weeks, decades happen. And that's what I think that we're dealing with now, particularly in the last couple of years, but I think more so in the last 5 years, and we are sliding quickly. And on that basis, I can understand fully what Andrew's doing, and I support it. We don't get to see him as much. I don't like that, of course, but it's his life. He needs to live it. I need to abide by what I told him in the late 1990s, go where you're treated best, and that might be somewhere other than where your parents live, maybe far away as it is. And so that's kind of how I feel about it. And sometimes I'm saddened. My only concern right now is, look, the whole world's a mess. It's not just the U.S. It's not just the legacy brand countries that Andrew talks about in the West, which it's just awful what is happening. You call it the suicide of the West. We've taken, in the West, not just the United States, we've taken some wonderful achievements, and we just seem to be chucking it, throwing it out the window. And it is so sad. And there's no leadership. There's nobody standing up and saying, stop. So I understand that Andrew, you know, as he points out, some of these places he's got a presence in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. When he was born, that was a backwater. Look at what they've done. They're nearly a first world country today. We've been there. It's a marvelous place. And you can be in the United States and see ghettos that are far worse than what you're seeing in KL. So, there are other places in the world. It's not just the U.S. It's not just the West. There are places to go. And hopefully some of these places have seen the mistakes of the 20th century and socialism and communism and the tens of millions of deaths and the economic ruin and so on and so forth, and thinking, we're not going to let that happen here. I think of Czechoslovakia recently, they voted out the communists. It wasn't the old people, it was the kids. Maybe they're seeing the light, at least in parts of the world. And so Andrew saying, well, I'm going to go where I'm treated best, and I'm going to try out some of these countries. My only concern is, we all slide into the ocean together. But I'm not sure that that's going to be the case. I think there still will be some places to go, because there'll be some places that say, hey, we want those best and brightest to come to our place and make it a better society for all. So I still think those opportunities will exist, and they may even exist in the U.S. in certain pockets. Maybe not everywhere, and maybe a lot less than it used to be, but there may still be some places where that can be the case. So my thoughts on Andrew's expatriation. It's not something that the Nomad Mom and I are going to do right now, but we are spending some time outside the U.S., and we're in Mexico right now and enjoying it. Totally different culture. And we'll see what happens. As to Andrew, I think really it's probably the right decision. Took a lot of guts. He has jumped into the deep end of the pool, but he had a lot of knowledge, forethought. This is not something he did on a whim, nor should you. A lot of research, a lot of time spent. My thoughts on Andrew, it's bittersweet, but I think it's likely the right decision. I'm Bob Henderson. I'm the Nomad Dad. So nice to see you.